The Princeton is based at Long Beach, and of course relatives of crew members gathered at the Long Beach Naval Yard today. That's where our Sylvia Lopez is standing by live. What have they heard, Sylvia?
Well, not much, unfortunately, from this end. In fact, most of the information is coming out of the command center. The ship behind us, though, is the sister ship. It's the Antietam, the sister ship of the USS Princeton. So you can see that the ties here, the USS Princeton's ties to Long Beach, are many. There are several people here, friends and families of those aboard the USS Princeton. They were crushed when they heard about the news today of the mine damage, and they say their hearts are in the Gulf. The USS Princeton left Long Beach bound for the Gulf on December 8th. A high-tech guided missile cruiser, the billion-dollar warship is equipped with a computer-linked radar and missile system for long-range air defense. Like all warships in the Gulf, the Princeton operates with special mine spotters on deck at all times.
And we also have one person stationed on the port and starboard side of the bridge wings, and a fantail watch.
The sister ship of the Princeton, the Antietam, just returned from a deployment in the Gulf last December, so her crew knows how hard it is to try to spot a mine.
You're out there looking at just miles and miles of water, and your eyes get transfixed to the ocean. So it's really hard, you know. And at night it's even worse.
Until now, more than 80 mines had been discovered in the Gulf, but none had damaged a vessel. So wives of sailors aboard the Princeton say that may have lulled them into a false sense of security.
I had felt pretty well convinced that they were, you know, safe, and while I knew that there were mines out there, it never crossed my mind that, you know, there'd be a problem. At first I was scared, and then you have to pull yourself together.
The Navy wives say they didn't sleep at all last night. They're not sure they'll rest tonight.
Not really. It's still that apprehensive, not knowing. I know he's okay, but I sure would like a call. When they pull back into Pier 7, I'll get a good night's sleep. That's true.
Those Navy wives that we spoke to are not related to any of the injured sailors aboard the USS Princeton. They are simply the spokespeople, the spokeswives, if you will, for all of the wives of sailors aboard the USS Princeton. Now, just to give you an idea of how tense they were, there was a 21-gun salute in honor of George Washington's birthday in the middle of that press conference, and I'll tell you that most of us, all of us, including the Navy wives, jumped about a foot off the ground. That gives you an idea of how tense they are. Tense, but also relieved that there weren't more injuries and more serious injuries at that. Reporting live from the Long Beach Naval Station, I'm Sylvia Lopez. Back to you, Jim and Bree.
All right, Sylvia. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Here, Harold. 2 U.S. warships were damaged today when they struck Iraqi mines in the Persian Gulf. 7 seamen were injured, one of them seriously. One of the ships involved is the USS Princeton, a guided missile cruiser based in Long Beach. Several wives who have husbands on board that ship held a news conference today to talk about that incident with the media.
At first I was scared, and then you have to pull yourself together, because you have to, I mean, I'm assistant ombudsman and I have a responsibility for my wives that I have to call. So you have to tell yourself that your husband's okay and do your job.
Mrs. Tharp's husband was not injured in that incident. Harold.
Word that 2 American warships were hit by mines sent shockwaves right here to the Southland.
And that's because Southern California is home to those 2 ships, the USS Tripoli, home port San Diego, and the USS Princeton, home port Long Beach. For more, we'll go to our David Jackson, who's in the Persian Gulf on the island nation of Bahrain, and he joins us now live by telephone. David, what's the latest there?
Well, Pat, more than anything else, the mine explosions in the Gulf point out just how dangerous these waters continue to be, both for ships and for marine landing craft, should they be hitting the water anytime soon. The 2 naval vessels, damaged within hours of each other, are still fully operational in the Gulf, but with crews that are more than a little shaken. Mines, the silent, deadly threat to all warships, rocked 2 Southland vessels sent to war duty in the Persian Gulf. At 4:40 in the dark Gulf morning, the USS Tripoli, home ported in San Diego, was using its helicopters to clear mines when it struck a floating mine itself. The Tripoli was taking on water from a big gash, a 16 by 25-foot hole under the waterline.
I felt the ship started to rock, and I heard a loud blast, and I saw water spray over the bow. you know, and then I heard one of the officers say we put a mine. I heard the explosion before anything else. I thought this was it, that we were going down. It was like a nightmare almost.
4 sailors were wounded aboard the Tripoli. 1 had a concussion, 1 had a broken collarbone, and 2 suffered cuts and bruises. A general quarters alarm sounded, sending all men to their battle stations.
Our own helicopters inbound shortly from other units to assist. We are weapons tight. I repeat, weapons tight, except for my direction.
Crews quickly managed to stop the flooding.
The minute that thing happened, everybody was on their feet and moving. They knew exactly what to do, where to go, and how to do it. It's in their mind. Training, training, training.
But the important thing is, guys, the ship is safe. We're stable right now.
Scuba divers then entered the water and reported back on the damage.
Starts about 10 feet below the water line and goes to 2 feet above the keel.
The Tripoli is an amphibious helicopter assault ship, also known as a helicopter landing platform, that'll carry 2,000 local Marines into Kuwait during any ground war. The Tripoli is also the flagship in a mine-sweeping operation to clear the way for an expected amphibious assault on Kuwait. Then, less than 3 hours after the Tripoli hit that mine, the USS Princeton, home ported in Long Beach, was also ripped by a mine about 10 miles away. The USS Princeton suffered structural damage to its hull near the stern and lost one of its propellers. 3 sailors were wounded on board, 1 with a serious head injury. The U.S. Central Command says different types of mines hit the 2 ships.
The mine that hit the Tripoli, we think, was a contact mine. The indications, early indications, are that the mine that hit the Princeton was an influence mine, because surprisingly there is no hole in the Princeton.
The influence mines are underwater and are triggered by the pressure of a ship passing overhead. Anti-mine operations, including these by British warships, were stepped up after today's incidents. But experts say that mines will remain a silent and very deadly threat in the waters of the Gulf.
It's a very serious threat in any kind of conflict such as this. To employ mines is the obvious way of stopping somebody getting to your coastline. It's a very cheap and a very effective form of warfare.
Bahrain is the Navy's operations base here in the Persian Gulf, and we're about 125 miles south of where those 2 ships are right now. And if they need additional repairs, they will be brought into the port terminal facilities here in Bahrain, but so far there is no indication that they will be brought down here. And as I said, they remain fully operational up there, and will probably stay in position farther north of the island. Pat, Larry?
David, then would you say in your assessment that they are ready for an amphibious assault if that is necessary?
I think so, and certainly the location of the Tripoli up there, Pat, indicates exactly that. That's an Iwo Jima-class helicopter assault ship. We had taken some pictures, in fact, of the Iwo Jima itself here in Bahrain the last time that I was on the island here, and these are ships that are critical for any kind of landing assault. They carry Marines, they carry up to 2,000 Marines, and many helicopters, and these are what they literally hit the beaches with. The fact that those ships are right up there and in place means that they're just at the word go, they are certainly ready.
All right, thank you very much, David.
Well, reporting live from Saudi Arabia. Well, today's Gulf developments sure brought the war home to the Southland. At the Long Beach Naval Station, wives and families of the sailors aboard the USS Princeton gathered for support after word the ship was rocked by that mine. We'll have more from our Matt Stevens now.
The Princeton sailed in early December without the usual guarantee of a 6-month tour.
We no longer have the 6-month guarantee for our deployment. I don't think anyone's willing to speculate what's going to happen or how long it'll take, but I would hope to be back next summer sometime.
Sailors from other ships had jokingly called the Princeton Building 59 because it never seemed to leave the port. But there was a time last night when some feared it would never return.
Well, I knew that there were mines out there. It never crossed my mind that, you know, there'd be a problem.
Colleen Miller's husband, Greg, was not among the 3 men injured aboard the Princeton. But she and the rest of the Princeton wives spent a sleepless night wondering.
You have to tell yourself that your husband's okay and do your job. I mean, he's over there doing his job, and I know he's okay, and I know he wouldn't want me to fall apart.
Emily Tharp learned that her husband, Tony, was safe at about 7 this morning, 7 hours after learning of the incident. The Princeton sister ship, the Antietam, returned from the Gulf on December 20th after a 6-month tour. Neither ship's radar can detect mines, so if the Princeton was not escorted by a mine-sweeping helicopter, it was relying on sailors using binoculars or night vision glasses to spot them. Sailors on the Antietam say there is so much debris floating in the Gulf that the mines are very difficult to detect. There was a time when the families of sailors felt a sense of security. It would appear now that time is past. Matt Stevens, Channel 9 News, Long Beach.
Until today's mine explosions, the U.S. Navy had suffered relatively little damage in the Gulf War, although several planes have been lost. But now, as the ships move closer to Kuwait for a possible assault from the sea, they're becoming more vulnerable. For reaction to the mine blasts, Tom Vakar went to the USS Princeton's home base today. Tom?
There's the human story and then the story behind the story. The Princeton was one of 2 ships damaged by mines today. The other is the USS Tripoli, a helicopter assault ship. Now, it's used for landing troops, the Princeton for defending them. The Tripoli ran into a floating mine, but protecting this ship, the other ship, one of the Navy's newest, apparently never detected a more sophisticated mine, and it paid the price. The Navy says the awesomely expensive Aegis-guided missile cruisers are its highest of high-tech ships. The next morning, following the mine damage to the Princeton and injuries to her crew, the Long Beach Naval Station, Princeton's home port, called the media in to speak to 4 wives of crew members. A respectful press asked the wives for their reaction.
I walked out of my house and had a good cry, and then I knew I had to go back in and I had to start notifying our families.
He's over there doing his job, and I know he's okay, and I know he wouldn't want me to fall apart.
And when I got off the phone with her, I called my father, because he's retired Air Force, and he always knows what to say to make me calm down.
Though several Aegis cruisers are ported here, including the Princeton's sister ship, the Antietam, the Navy would provide no spokesperson to answer more pointed questions about the ship itself. According to the ship's brochure, the Princeton and Antietam both have at least 13 super high-tech sensor systems to detect threats under, on, or above the water. Claiming they're virtually untouchable by incoming missiles, aircraft, other ships, and even submarines, the Navy has gotten Congress to spend $1.1 billion each. But the embarrassing fact is, the mine was obviously not detected by the ship's many sophisticated electronic systems, nor the eyeballs of numerous posted outlooks on dayside duty when the mine was struck. Given no official Navy response, we asked the wives for their reaction to such extensive damage caused by a single mine.
The mines could have been picked up by sonar for all I know, as being a fish.
The Princeton was operating in the northern Persian Gulf in broad daylight and was hit 2.5 hours after the assault ship Tripoli was damaged close by. But the Navy had nothing to say of the obvious Achilles heel born into the billion-dollar-plus ships. Guided missile cruisers are most effective against submarines and enemy aircraft, especially to defend ships landing troops like the Tripoli. If Saddam Hussein launches the remainder of his Air Force, ships like the Princeton will be crucial. Well, I'll have more from
Larry and Pat about the USS Princeton, which has been put in here in Bahrain, trying to determine over the next hour or two whether or not the sailors on board the Princeton would be redeployed in any way onto other ships. We had heard yesterday from some naval officers that could be a possibility. It hasn't been confirmed. We'll try and find out. As you know, the Princeton may end up sitting out the war under repair here in Bahrain for the next couple of months. Back to you.
David, an interesting footnote here before the